You're listening to Halftime with your host, Mylan Bittenbender, where each week we take a few minutes to step off the field of life and discuss the challenges and joys of navigating life in the middle years. I hope your time with us today will help you develop your strategy for a winning second half. Welcome to the locker room. You're among friends. So what do you do when a pretty simple injury suddenly reorganizes your entire life? And how do you handle it when prayer after prayer after prayer seems to go unanswered? You know, this kind of thing can happen at any point in our lives, but the older we get, the more our body reminds us that we are not really in control. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with Mike Dubbink, who had a pretty simple injury that with medical intervention should have gotten better and better. But instead, as time went on, it got worse and worse. It impacted his life more and more. But that's not the end of the story. And I hope that you'll tune in to the entirety of this story and hear how God intervened and how God worked in his life. And I hope that it's an inspiration for you today as you consider the different challenges that you're facing in life. Mike, welcome to the Halftime Podcast. I am so glad that you're on today. I've been so excited to be able to share your story with everybody and really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Mylan. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah. So I remember we met back in what would be 2003, 4, something like that.
Yeah,
When did you come to Hope?
Ago. I think it was 2003 or 4, 20 years ago. Yeah.
All right. Yep. I was a youth pastor at First Baptist Church. We were doing our thing, and I remember they hired you, and you came in, and man, you had it going on. You were a ball of energy, and you were sharp and fun to be around. And I remember we had some really great opportunities to do some stuff together. Yeah. And I really, man, I enjoyed those years. That was really cool, getting to know you and working with you and feeling like, man, we were able to do something really cool in this community together.
Yeah, that was really fun. It was good years.
Yep. Now, just to bring kind of everybody up to speed, because different people know you from different time frames and places and all of that. You ended your time there at Hope. When was that?
2014, I think I ended after 10 years at Hope. Yep.
Yeah. And so then you were working with the county, right?
Yeah, with the Department of Health and Human Services, kind of underserved populations of kids that were struggling and families through difficult things. Yep.
Yeah. And I remember having a few conversations with you when you were in the middle of that stuff, and just, you know, some of the things that you were seeing and experiencing. I know that really had an impact on you, some of the families that you worked with and that kind of thing. And now, what are you doing these days?
Yeah, I've been teaching again at Baseline Middle School, so U.S. history with a bunch of 8th graders primarily for the last 8 years. And 5 years ago, I started selling real estate. So getting to work with all different ages on that too. So I enjoy
Cool. Mm-hmm. Do you want to do just a quick, what would you say to anybody who's looking for a home? I'll give you free airtime, bro.
I appreciate it, but that's not what this is about.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, if you need a home, think about Mike.
Appreciate the plug.
Yeah. And now we get to serve together again.
Yes.
We're working with teenagers. I'm not sure how somehow I got sucked in. Now, Mike is barely midlife. I'm full blown midlife. And I'm working with the 6th grade boys at Hope Reformed Church. And Mike, you're still very, very involved in the ministry. And so it's fun. We get to be able to do that together again. It's really cool. And actually, that is kind of a little bit of the impetus for why I invited Mike to be on the show. Several weeks ago at youth group, you shared your story, your absolute miracle story. And man, it was just so cool. I'd heard little bits and pieces of it, and I was like, man, I have got to get Mike on the show to be able to share that story, and not just the story, but where you're at in life, how it's impacted you, and the things that you've learned and the ways that you've grown. And so we're going to get into that story, but first, I want to ask you just a little bit about your past. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Overijssel, which is a little little town. It's in Hamilton, which is a little town
Yeah.
near Holland, which is a bigger town. Yeah, so about 30
Yeah.
minutes northeast of here is where
Okay.
I grew up in a farming community. Yeah,
Yeah. And what year did you graduate from high school?
yeah, 2000.
2000. Okay. So
Yeah,
your
just a
high
baby.
school years, and for most of us, we think of our, we think of the golden age, being kind of our high school years and all of that. That was for you was the mid 90s, late 90s.
Mhm.
So tell me, what do you remember from growing up? Things that you were into, and maybe some things that we would remember that we'd connect with.
Yeah.
Or What are some of your favorite like bands? Your favorite, toys or gadgets, whatever. What was hot when you were in high school?
Oh, Atari, because
Okay,
we lived in Hamilton, and so it finally had to reach us, right? 10 years later, when everybody else was on Super Nintendo, we were on Atari finally. So we were
sweet.
super old school. The channel changer was the vice grips on the TV, and we got three stations maybe, and it's just black and white. Just we were old school, and we were farming, and I was often
Wow,
I was working on farms since I was in second grade. No joke. Walked from school to get eggs every day after school. Totally against the law today, but that's what we did in Hamilton, and that's how I grew up.
that's awesome. I didn't know
Yeah.
you grew up on a farm. So you obviously had chickens if you were collecting eggs, unless you were collecting eggs of a different type. I don't know.
So,
Um, what else? Describe a little bit of your farm. I mean, was it like a full blown? You guys had the big combines and were doing fields and all that kind of stuff, or what kind of farm was
no,
it?
yeah. So my grandparents were chicken farmers who lived across
Okay,
like the muddy field, the 5 minute walk over 100 acres to get to
yeah,
grandpa and grandma's house. But my dad had a hog farm
okay,
and a little bit of cattle at times, but that was prices weren't great. So when I say farms, it was mostly just working on farms in Overijssel. So some people from our church, whether it be the Kleinexel family or the Klein family with their hogs and power washing hog coops and just manual labor, and then at Zoot Poultry. There's
yeah.
9 poultry places today in the state of Michigan, and I worked on one of those. So the
Really?
world renowned Zoot Poultry in Hamilton. Yeah.
How many chickens did?
Oh,
Because those places amaze me.
yeah.
How many chickens do you think were there? Did you guys work with?
Hundreds of thousands. And then we drove by
Wow,
there the other day, and it's probably 10 million. It's just multiplied. All of those chicken farms are just
wow.
enormous. So, yeah.
I got to be honest with you. It's a bad world to live in if you're a chicken. Everything eats chicken, and
Yeah.
I'm a big chicken eater. I eat a lot of chicken, so we need those chicken farmers. So
Yeah.
now, you where did you graduate college from?
Yeah, I went to Grand Valley State University, graduated there with a degree in psychology, and
Okay,
then went into youth ministry though, straight out. I
yeah,
knew that was the path, that was the track, so kind of jumped right in here in South Haven.
that's awesome. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the years, and again, see little parts of your story. I think have all three of my boys been in your class? At
Yes,
least two of them have.
took me a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah,
and I've had a lot of kids. I
right.
was thinking about that. There's over 1,000 kids in youth group and with over 1,000 in school, so it's
Yeah,
hard to keep them all track right now. But yeah, yeah, they
yeah.
all three of them have.
So yeah, we definitely keep connecting, and like I said, you shared your story the other night, and I really want you to be able to kind of unpack that, and be able to share your story, because it is one of those like wow, just warms your heart kind of stories. But I want to kind of get into the weeds a little bit too
Sure.
of what your experience was. A lot of times we hear the story and we know all of the kind of pieces, and then this happened and that happened. I want you to obviously share all of that, but I also want to, this is a podcast about midlife. Like I
Mhm.
said, you're kind of just at the very beginning of midlife, but even
Barely
in
there.
barely there,
Yeah.
and you're going to hang on to that as long as you can, right? Um, but one of the things that I noticed is that and a lot of times it's in midlife that we face physical limitations and challenges. That's one of the big, huge things that kind of we hit this wall, and all of a sudden we don't feel indestructible anymore, and we feel like wow, there's an expiration date on my life, and I feel like I've got to take this more seriously. Um, and that's one of the things that causes us to kind of go through a lot of these thought processes and challenges and changes and things that happen in midlife. And so I feel like to some degree, and midlife is really it's not an age bracket; it's more of kind of an experience bracket. And I feel like you've kind of had to deal with some of those things a little bit earlier, and it's taking you through that. And I've seen a maturing in you. In some areas that I think are really powerful, and I want to dig into that a little bit. So, if you could start, tell us a little bit about what happened in the beginning, because I think it was a kind of a basic injury, right? That just kind of grew into crazy from there. Tell us what
Yeah.
happened.
Dodgeball video. I dressed up like so it's for Baseline Middle School. It's big dodgeball weeks. We're doing a
Yeah,
skit. Get kids involved. We want every single kid we possibly can to be part of a dodgeball team, right? It's a great culture event we do. And so I
yeah,
dressed up like a red coat, like put the boots on, everything. One size fits all, they say. The boots were super small. I'm skipping across a gym with dodgeballs being thrown at me for this video. And a couple days later, it was just clear that my Achilles wasn't the same. So
hmm,
hung on to it for a while. It's like 4 years ago, probably. And then just needed a surgery. I needed the
yeah,
surgery on my Achilles, little Hagelin's deformity. Some things went on. So I went and had surgery number one. Um, a year later, had surgery number two with an
wow,
extension of my calf on my Achilles. And you know how it is when you just like things hurt all the time and it's just you're not able to do what you want to do. So it
yeah,
wasn't it was just my kids are big into sports, and as a dad would want to do, you want to toss the ball, you want to make sure that you're there playing catch and doing whatever you can with the kids, and that's a significant part of what we did and do, and I just couldn't do that.
mm,
No matter what I took, medications, whatever else, it just wasn't working. So I went in to see another doctor, surgeon number three, and it turned out that they had some things rescheduling, and so I went to see another surgeon, and they said that we're going to do a reconstruction of your Achilles, where the goal is to be able to play with your kids, to be a dad again, where when they ask you, "Hey, Dad, you want to go play catch? Hey, Dad, you want to run around?" Yes, is my
yeah,
go-to answer. Like every dad wants, and um, so I was excited about the possibility of getting this thing under control. So November 16th, 2022 rolls around, and I head to Lakeland Niles for a surgery, a reconstruction. They're going to put some pins in the Achilles. They're going to take out all of the stuff that was wrong with it, and then
mm,
hopefully within 6 months to a year, you're walking, you're playing, you're back to 100. Hopefully a year later. It's a long process, but
yeah,
so I did that. Um, and that right afterwards, there's a 6 weeks, 8 weeks healing process. You're kind of sitting in a chair, boots up, foots up, resting everything, hoping everything, heals back. People are praying for you. Everything's good going on. And so we got to January. It's time to go back to school. Holidays are over. I'm sick of sitting in a chair. It's time to be back to work. And, when you're a teacher and you're off, you get replenished, but you kind of miss the kids. So you're after
yeah,
the holidays, super excited to see the kids, and it just wasn't responding the way it should
mm,
have. My foot, my
yeah.
Achilles, and so I went to wound care for about 6 to 8 weeks through
So
Bronson, and yeah,
the actual wound wasn't healing, or
yeah.
you were
So
still in pain, or what was the
just kind of everything. I was still in
okay.
a little bit of pain. The wound was not healing correctly. I was walking with a gait to the right of my foot, not as I should have, and the wound
Mm,
was open. And wounds should
wow.
close, So you're
Yeah.
like, what's the deficiency? We had some testing, pre-diabetic testing. What's going on here? Why is it not closing? And every test I had, I got to say, I wasn't in that category, but man, I was close. So that
Yeah.
kind of right is like, all right, I need to change some other things because there's some test results coming here that are not positive. So I went to some wound care. We did that every week. Met with the same doctors. I feel like I got to know a lot of medical staff on a very personal level throughout the last year. And at the same time, I went to a dermatologist, a specialist in north of Holland, just to try and work on some of that. They all cultured it. They came up with different things. We had different antibiotics. Everything was going. Physical therapy had started at that point too, making a little bit of progress. And then um, I'm teaching one day in March, and it's kind of healing. It's kind of not. And it's just, I look at the back of my foot, and it's, there's blood all over. So sorry, that's kind of grotesque,
Wow.
but it just,
No.
it was like, oh man, this isn't going right. So
Mm.
um, just trying to make, whatever. I'm just struggling through it. I'm a guy that just thinks over time this is going to happen. We'll be good, right? It's going to heal. And I remember a significant in April. I was getting the shakes at night, and had a fever, and I just wasn't in a good place in April, and I whatever sleep it off, that kind of thing. The next day at school, I'm planning out. I just had to call my principal, and I said, I'm not well. Something in my body is not going right now from the surgery. I just can feel it. I need to give in right now.
Wow.
And so the hospital, I called them, and they said, come right away. And so um, went
And
up to
now, at
yeah.
this point, how far are you from skipping across the
Yeah.
gym floor in a
It's like,
costume being thrown? Are
yeah,
we like? Is this like a year?
years. This is years later, right? Yeah, this is like 3 or 4 years later. And it's six
Wow.
months post surgery in November.
Yeah.
So um, you mentally don't want to think things aren't going right. Like your
Mhm.
mental state, you want to be like, it's positive, it's healing. Everybody's asking you how you doing great. Like you're hoping that that's gonna, you don't want to be that um, in despair.
Sure.
You want to think positively through it all too. And so, I called the hospital, and they said you need to come in. And so
Yeah.
I went to the ER, and they ran a bunch of tests and did blood work and all this stuff. And so they determined that I had MRSA. So a lot of people get MRSA. It's a resistant staph type, and it's resistant to antibiotics. A lot of people get it. It's
Mm.
fairly usual. But they don't get it in their bone or their bloodstream. That becomes a little bit more impactful in life, lifelong, some possibilities there. So
Sure. Yeah.
so we had some tests, and unfortunately, some of the tests came back, and it was in the bone. And so it was one of those moments where I realized, well, all right, we've got to rethink things a little bit. And yeah, so
But
I'm
you've
at
already
that.
rethought things, what, 5, 6 different times at this point?
Yeah, I try to be positive about life, right? Like I think we
Yeah.
all try to be positive, and we
Right.
we try to say, all right, these priorities that I need to have are my faith, my family, and all this stuff, and like trying to get going with life. But life gets put on pause, and it's not our timing always.
Yeah.
Um, I had to realize that quite a few times. So
Tell
um,
tell me about the battle with frustration. I mean, it seems like I've been through situations where, a situation wasn't going right, and then it wasn't going right again, and then it wasn't going right again, and you start to get into this pattern, and you start to, and like you said, I want to be positive, I want to be strong. I'm the man of the home. I've got to be a good example, and all of these things, but these feelings of frustration just keep coming back. How was that? How was that playing out for you?
um, it's tough, right? When you're going through anything. I have had a pretty easy life. You know,
Mm,
I
yeah,
I'm thankful for that. I sometimes think like, we need to be a little more empathetic as men in general. That's not our number one
sure,
tendency. And so these things cause you to kind of see your life, and you're like, you know what, things are good though. This isn't
yeah,
going well, but things are good. And mentally I can do this. And so you put yourself in some thought-provoking books and resource and people and letters and cards are coming in, and there's some things that uplift you, and you're hanging your hat on those things,
yeah,
and you can do
yeah,
that for a while.
yeah.
Those friends and those relationships absolutely gave me a lot of hope and strength, and the prayers that I know are being said was, I could feel that. This is at April, where
Mhm.
all right, I've got a little something in my bone, this is okay, we're going to do this. So
Yeah. So what
yeah.
was the next thing? I mean, at this point, you got to be thinking, okay, what now, right?
Yeah.
So what was the next step?
I mean, that was pretty early. I wasn't at the what now stage yet, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so it had been
Okay.
6 months, but
So you're way stronger than me then, because I would have been at the what the heck now stage.
I wasn't there yet.
Okay.
I
Okay, go
mean,
ahead.
disappointing, yes, but like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was preparing my mind mentally to not be there yet, right?
Yeah.
So I thought
Okay.
I'm going to strengthen this out. I'm going to use my determination, my grit. Um, a treatment plan was created, right? I went to Corewell Health Hospital every day for 42
Mhm.
days straight. So I went to the
Wow.
hospital, hooked me up to IVs. We pumped antibiotics through me. They put a PICC line in me, so it's basically something that goes right to your heart. So the antibiotics get thrown in with an IV line to your heart, and then it's supposed to discharge. And really, it's to protect your heart because
Mm.
your body is this MRSA is going through your bones, and it's very difficult to stop. And so you're worried that it could get to the bloodstream, and if it goes to the bloodstream, it's it can be life threatening, right?
Yeah.
It's a cause of death. So for 42 days in a row, we had some great staff there. We met some great relationships. We joked around, like you do at a hospital, because what else are you gonna do when you're in that situation? So 6 weeks, and my levels were going the wrong way. Like
Wow.
we did blood work every week, going to the hospital, and it was just going the wrong way. So
Mm.
um, I had Allie and I had never been away. Allie's my wife; she's a teacher too at Maple Grove, and so we had never been away for a vacation. So we planned. I planned this. I didn't. My wife and I, with another couple, planned this great vacation to Italy, and we're going to see her sister and brother-in-law and their kids because they were stationed in Italy, and so it was
Mm.
this awesome time to get away. And uh, that was coming up in a few weeks, but I had 42 days straight in the hospital. So what was the plan after that? The doctor said we're going to do another 14 days. Later on, I found out the maximum they really give is 6 weeks. So I got 8 weeks.
Wow.
So that's where it got a little emotional, wanting to get away with Allie, kind of reconnect with her. That's really important, right? Going out, doing something for our marriage, for ourselves. Um, and then I felt like, man, I'm kind of hindering this. Um,
Mm.
I know that was no one else's intent. Everyone was very good about that, but it's this personal thing as a guy. I'm like, man, I'm kind of getting in the way of the
Yeah.
plans here a little bit. Um, so
Yeah, you
we
you
met.
you're no longer the asset, now you're the liability, right?
I'm the
And
liability.
we wanna be the asset in life. We wanna be, the guy, right? We wanna be the one that everybody's glad dad's around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Dads are supposed to be fun. Dads are supposed to be strong. Dads are supposed to be able to lead their family and be with their family and make all these experiences. And it just wasn't happening. And
Mm.
so I went I got some treatment by some infectious disease specialist in Lakeland, University of Michigan, a nice team of people that had given me lots of different opinions and direction. And I ended up going to U of M to a really specialist in Achilles, Dr. David Walton. And that was a real day when we met with him. And he looked at all the test results and kind of the levels and everything else. And he just sat down and looks you in the eyes and he just shoots you straight. And I appreciate that when people are really real with you. And
Yeah.
he said, basically, I don't think you realize how bad this is.
Mm.
Uh, I just want you to know what could happen. And so that was a tough conversation. He just, for somebody who hadn't gone through much in life, that was just trying to quick play with their kids again, the conversation was based on like, you may not walk again. You may,
Wow.
we may amputate your leg. The depth, the brittleness of the bone in the region, and the amount of MRSA that's inside of you has attacked your Achilles. It's hooked onto those screws and it's not going away. So nothing we can
Mm.
do will take it away. I need to, get in there and remove it um, and reconstruct. First of all, he said, I need to get this out of you, the MRSA. And so with a team of doctors and that wasn't, the concern wasn't the Achilles. The concern was just get the MRSA out
Yeah.
before it does any more damage. So, yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
how are you feeling at that point?
well, we were supposed to go to Italy in like a week and a half. Um, so, so he's like, well, you can go to Italy. I felt like he was saying one last hurrah, which just sounds awful, right?
Right?
I'd rather have a lot more hurrahs in life. So, that was an easy decision. We just said
Mhm.
we're not going to Italy,
Mhm.
unfortunately, because
Wow.
life changes things. And um, the couple days later, he got me in uh, to surgery, and we had surgery in Ann Arbor, and that's when you can tell what's really going on, right? You open you up, and you see what's really there. And so he's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, the Achilles is gone. It's just done. Took it out." Complete removal of the Achilles. The screws obviously that were there came out, and then the bone was pretty brittle, so he took out a good section of dead bone. And
Wow.
and then it's like the meeting after where it's like, hey, this is what happened. And then I didn't know what was going to happen, but he did say, we're looking at a couple more surgeries, and the riskier reconstructions and skin grafting, and just really that possibility of not walking, or amputation. All those things are really on the table still. And
Mhm.
that was a really big gut check for me. A lot of people have been praying. Um, uh, why was this happening? I mean,
Sure.
I was following doctor's orders, right? So why is this happening? I feel like I'm setting my priorities up right. My mental state is good. Everything's good. So why is this happening?
And you're a good guy, doggone it. I
Most of the
mean,
time,
yeah.
who knows?
And as followers of Christ, or even if we're not, people of faith, if we're a really good person, or we at least think we're a really good person, or try to be a really good
I think
person,
so.
we feel like, man, we should get a break for that, I guess,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I remember,
Sometimes.
by the way, I remember praying for you, as many, many, many people were. And I was getting a little disappointed with you. I was thinking, we were praying like crazy, and then you'd get a bad report, and we'd pray harder, and then you'd get another bad report. So anyway, I didn't want to interrupt your story.
Yeah. No, there's so many people praying, and I knew that, and I
Mhm.
could feel that, the sense that what is going on, God? There's so many people praying,
Yeah.
and so I was staying at Ann Arbor, and it was a couple days after the surgery, and they were running IVs through me, just different. They I don't know how, whatever they do, they get in their chem labs and they figure out the right potions to give you and the chemical treatments, and you're just like, sure, give it to me, I'll take anything. So
Yeah.
I took a treatment. It was like at midnight, and there were just continually IVs flowing through me, trying to get the MRSA out, right? Just
Wow.
get the MRSA out. But in the middle of the night, my eyes are burning and I lost vision. I had a chemical reaction. I couldn't see. I was blind in the middle of the night in the
Mm.
hospital. And I'm just like, what is going on? My good headspace that I had been in for such a long time was not good anymore. I was
Yeah.
completely just like, get this, just stop. Whatever we're doing is not working. I just am ready to go home and just whatever. This is crazy. So
Yeah.
I stayed there, and I went to some follow up treatments at Mott's Children's Hospitals for some IVs and some other stuff. And the staff, all these medical places, are so patient and so good. And they're so, even with very large Dutchmen that are kind of crotchety and grouchy like myself, they're so good. And so I was in the hospital for a little bit longer. And man, I was not in a good spot, but you return home and if you're somebody that gives cards or gifts or just like the phone calls or just the note of encouragement from people I knew and people I didn't know very well, and there was
Yeah.
one common theme, there was one common verse that continued to come up, and I think it was written in 4 cards that I'd received. So I was like, that was a cool message. When you get something 4 times, it's from God then. And
Yeah.
so it was just a quick um, actually, I'm gonna bring it up a second because I'm gonna miss it if I don't here. All right. This is a verse that is really impactful for me. James 1, 2, 3, and 4. It just talks about what the heck you do during trials when
Yeah.
life isn't going right. And God does this countercultural thing where he's like, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. And I'm like, man, that it's not very joyful because the testing
Yeah.
your faith produces perseverance, and let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything.
Mm.
So I kept coming back to this verse, and I had friends and people praying and texting this verse of like, consider it pure joy. So that was the challenge, right? How do you
Yeah.
be joyful when you're going through the trial? So, yeah.
Wow.
Um,
So, yeah, was there ever a point where you just felt like, seriously, God, consider it pure joy? You want me
yeah.
to? Did you ever feel like, God, what are you going to do on your part? Or
Yeah.
um, yeah, how was your faith at that point?
It, yeah, there, I gotta say, like, it was a long summer. It was a long summer.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes we get stuck on ourselves too when we're going through this, right?
mm,
Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in life, and God still gives us a lot, even when we're going through a trial or temptation.
yeah,
And I had to think through that and think about others and pray for other people and try and get out of
mm,
myself and not be so
wow,
selfish. And that was a challenge.
yeah,
Because it just was a long summer. I'd been on an e-scooter for like 8 months by then, pretty much. Primarily, just, I mean, my mom's taking care of me. I mean,
wow,
I'm not supposed to, like, like,
yeah,
a grown man. I'm a very large grown man. Like, for my mom to take care of me and like a wheelchair ramp up for all that stuff, and just to be like, this maybe the new norm.
yeah,
Um, not being able to really do much, and so I think the lowest point for me was I'm uh, I'm in the living room, and I had some friends, dear friends, neighbors, drop over a recliner, and every dad likes the recliner, right? So they gave
sure,
me a recliner, so I have my recliner, and I was just laying up there with my foot in like every single day,
mm,
and Allie's sister, and Ellie's two sisters, my wife's two sisters, came up to visit from Italy, the one that we couldn't see, and
wow,
from Virginia. And it was this really special time that they came over, and we're just trying to serve her and just love on her while all this was going on with me, because she was such a trooper. Like,
mm,
the caregivers, what that does in that situation is pretty
right,
impactful to them. They don't, their mental toughness has to be at a whole other level because you're kind of feeding off that.
yeah,
You know, so they come, and my chest is hurting and my breathing is difficult, and man, I'm like, I just gotta suck this up, right? They're here to visit her from like once from Italy, suck it up.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then another day, and then I'm like, man, I can't breathe well at all. Like, I'm just like sucking air, and I just realized I gotta go in, and so
mm,
I go back into the hospital, and that day was the low, because I'm at the hospital again. They did so many tests, and I was just sick of getting tests done, right? You feel like a lab rat, and more tests and what's going to happen. And so there were some pulmonary blockages. So I had some blood blockages, blood clots in my lungs, and I struggled to breathe.
wow,
And I remember looking at Allie in the bed. She was just bawling, right? I'm bawling. And she's like, "What the heck, God? What are you doing?" And the
wow,
conversation was not PG rated. It was very real and raw. And it was, how can you go through this, and the hurt to my family too, right? Like, it's not just you that gets hurt in it, but like your family you
absolutely,
put on pause, and they're doing everything for you,
yeah,
and that's tough. Um, and then there's this facing more surgery still, but I can't breathe now. I can't breathe. So
Did
they
you did you ever at any point think, "I might die"? I mean,
yeah
did you?
yeah I just don't I mean, I did, but
Yeah,
that's not something I really shared with people, like, I
right,
couldn't tell, like, I mean, I'm looking up percentages, right? Everybody's like Googling doctor stats and stuff. Like, what are the possibilities of these
right,
symptoms matching? And like, there's slim possibilities of those things. And um,
yeah,
there was just some nervousness, some raw emotions. See, I had always been a future orientated person.
mm,
Very seldom lived in the present. Um, by that, I mean, I always had two jobs. I thought, if I can build enough income now to take care of the future, that'll be good for my family.
yeah,
If I can, work extra hard now to do this, I'm going to leverage that later, and we're going to have trips, and we're going to have fun, and and so the future orientated self became, oh my goodness, I'm in the present right now, and I need to do something with my family to make this happen. So I couldn't do anything though, right? I couldn't do anything. So there was
Yeah.
people praying like crazy. All I could do, I got out like once a week, and priorities changed. I'd go to worship. Like I just wanted to go in the presence of God, and I wanted to sing. I want to be a part of worship. Like
Yeah.
that was the most important thing for me. So every Sunday I'd get out, go to worship. But other than that, I was just at home all the
Mm.
time. And so I took the medications for the the blood clots, and tried to all the thinners and all that kind of stuff that they were doing, and that kind of thinned out. And so all was well with that over time. That was actually within a week or two. I think it was like significantly better. So that was fantastic. And so one of the hard things, this is going on. You still got to have a job. You still got to work a lot
Right.
of days. I don't like that's a real thing, right? Like
Yeah.
work and money and bills. And so we had to, so I went back to school then in this knee scooter, 'cause that's what I did. And I remember the very first week of school was that Wednesday. We had some training or something, and Allie and I quick snuck off like an hour early to go to Ann Arbor to go meet with the doctor again. And this was going to be the first time he took off the boot. Right,
Yeah.
he's going to take off the boot from the other surgery, the secondary surgery that happened, and that happened in June, and it was like August 24 or something like that. And he took off that boot, and he's feeling around, and he just stopped, and he gave the most peculiar look at my wife. Like, I was like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, I thought he was a
Huh.
prof. And so he looked over at her again. He feels around my Achilles, like, get over here. Allie goes down there, puts her hands right on that Achilles too, and he's like, feel that. And he's like, that's an Achilles. And
Wow.
he's like, this is not possible. So he was just like, that is absolutely not possible. There's not a statistical chance that that could be an Achilles. I took it out. There's no case studies
Not
of a growing of an Achilles available.
not
And
only did he take out the Achilles, but you said
yeah,
he actually had to cut away some of the bone where the Achilles
yeah,
was attached, and so all of that, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So he cut away some of the bone, um, and so right, where he's just dumbfounded. He's staring there, and I'm just like a mess at that point. I
I
never cried
bet.
in life, man, but I'm like becoming this emotional like basket case, right? Just like whatever, God, use me however. And so I'm
Wow.
in the doctor's office there, just like, I know what happened. I know what happened. And then he says, hold on. He said, flex your calf. And my calves, which I used to prize because they were good calves, now my calf muscle is down to zero, right? But I see this tiniest little muscle movement in the calf, which meant, of course, the Achilles is connected to the calf.
Wow.
And so that was just like one of those times where he's just bewildered. That was like a 10, 15
Wow.
minute doctor visit, and he said like 12 words. He's just like looking at it. He's just kind of confused. And Allie's like, heck yes. Thank you, God. And so here's the thing, though. I wasn't really ready to say thank you, God, fully.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put myself out there because what if it didn't fully heal?
Sure.
What if it was
Yep.
there, but it wasn't working? What if too many setbacks, too much hope? Then kind of so Dr. Walton set up that MRI for Sunday night at midnight, September 11th. And so we went in for the MRI to show where it was attached and what was happening. A few days later, went back into Dr. Walton's office. He had this great smile on his face, and he was high-fiving and all kinds of things. And he was like, you know what? Get off that scooter. You're going to walk out of here on your own 2 feet. So,
Wow.
yeah, so there's no medical explanation for it. There's no case studies. It's grown back,
That
and
is
it's back to the
amazing.
right spots. Um, so, like,
Wow.
yeah, so grateful, so much gratitude. But still a hint of like, is this going to actually hold up? Right. That thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so some people have asked, like, what, what do you think it was when the moment you were healed? Because obviously this is a
Mm.
miracle, right? And I've been in situations too where like I've prayed for miracles
Yeah.
and it hasn't happened. Not the way I
Yep.
thought it was going to, not the way I prayed it to,
Yep.
you know?
Been
Um,
there. Yep.
yeah. So why me? And what was that moment? And
Mm.
you know, you're connecting with the Holy Spirit as we are living inside us. Like at any time, if you're a Christ follower, and there's just significant moments sometimes where you're like, "What was that? That
Yeah.
sense, that presence of the Spirit." And so, I remember we in August, I was fully determined to make it to this baptism service at Lake Arvesta, this annual thing, and I was there to celebrate. I wanted to celebrate because I had nothing else to look forward to. So I was like, I've got to go to this service and celebrate all those people there doing the baptism, saying, God, you're
Mm.
mine. And during that service, Allie, my wife, she's an incredible singer too, and
Yes, she is. Yeah.
she sang this song in Jesus' name, and one of the most powerful songs. And at that time, I was overcome by the Spirit. She's bawling right on stage singing, and I remember I quick grabbed sunglasses, threw them on my face because I felt the presence of God like never before, and just streaming
Mm.
down my face of that moment. So I don't know if that was the moment that God
Wow.
chose to heal. I guess that's not as important what moment it was, but I really think that um, I did nothing for that healing. I did absolutely nothing. I received it.
Yeah.
Um, and I really believe that the people that were praying for me um, moved the heart of God.
Mm.
I believe that when there's such prayer that can happen, and we can play a part in this role, and we're supposed to play a part in that role with people in relationships and praying for that, and for each other, and that the magnitude, the Google of people praying moved the heart of God, and he
Mm.
healed me. And the gratitude, and that's something I can't wrap my head around.
Sure.
And
Sure. Yeah.
so, yeah, yep,
Wow. What was it? I mean, what was it like in that moment? You said you were, laying on the table bawling.
yeah,
But what was it like to hear the doctor say that there's an Achilles there? Um,
yeah. Um, uh, I want to say like everything was good. Like it
yeah.
wasn't. I mean, I was like, yes, this
Yeah.
is awesome, but it was like my wife was way more faithful than I was. She was like, yes, thank you,
Mm.
God. No, the same. I was obviously like very much thankful, but I was like, I need to not trust this until I make sure it's better, because I
Yeah.
mentally just didn't want to go through that again. Right. That
Yeah. Yeah.
the mental part of the walk was the most challenging. Um, yeah.
Mike, I think you bring up something really important there, in that sometimes we don't have the faith that we need, or our faith isn't quite 100% there, and the faith of somebody else. That's the reason we need each other so much. And I think of couples, even husband and wife, or families, that maybe there's a strain in the relationship or whatever, and maybe sometimes we think of the relationship as just kind of, it is what it is, and we forget how deeply and profoundly we need one another, because it sounds like in that moment you
Oh,
needed the faith of your wife there.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, you know, there is something to that husband wife relationship where
Hmm.
when it's extremely healthy, um, it, it is mutually uh, two yoked as one, and it's, um, there was times where I absolutely needed it.
Yeah.
That friends praying over me.
Yeah.
Yeah, life isn't meant to be lived alone. And what I mean by that is not marriage wise, but also in terms of like just with your family and your faith community, and just in isolation. I was a mental mess
Yeah.
during that last year, but with the corporate body of people praying for me, it gave me clarity. And yeah, I'll never forget the. I hope I never forget. Actually, I guess you never know. Us guys forget things sometimes that are important,
Oh yeah.
but I hope I never forget how important it is to have your mind right.
Mm.
Um, and the amount of time and energy we put into our health is also in our
Yeah.
mind. and
Yeah.
the transforming of our mind, right? The renewing of our mind. And that has been something that I hope to take away from this.
Wow. Mike, I want to just say thanks so much for your transparency. It would be easy for you to say, you know, hey, I was like, I'm healed, sweet,
Yeah.
great. But for you to be able to say, man,
Yeah.
I had a hard time receiving it in the moment. Now we know that you received it and have celebrated that, and we've been able to, that hope of walking again. Yeah, I see you doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You're full of activity and energy, and if somebody met you today, they'd never know this story. I mean, to look at you, never know that anything happened. And that's beautiful. But I think, sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to be really real and honest with ourselves. You even talked about the time where you were so disappointed and frustration, and frustrated. You had that conversation with God, and it wasn't PG-13. And I think, I've learned that God is big enough to handle all
Mhm.
of that. Um, and sometimes we're not big enough to handle because we feel
Yeah.
like we're supposed to be different, respond different, and we almost kind of cut part of ourselves off. We oppress our own soul, and don't let our own soul be 100% honest and real. And I think we need to have those moments where we allow our soul to be real before other people, and more importantly before God.
Yeah. It's interesting how much we try to hide or
Mm,
fake out God.
yeah,
Um, and just not be raw and vulnerable and transparent with the one who knows everything about us,
yeah,
our thoughts and everything. And yeah, that we don't do that well. I think I'm not the only one. So yeah,
no, you're not. And as I've said, even this podcast is not me, an expert on midlife, here to save the day and tell everybody how to get through midlife. I'm like, no, that's my whole thing. I can't. I'm having a hard time figuring this out, and this has
yeah,
been a step of honesty for me to be able to say, okay, I need to hear other people's stories. I need to interview them to literally learn. I'm learning from you. Not just all the things you did right, but even just being able to identify with you and some of the difficulties and the hard parts.
mhm,
One of the questions that I have is, like I said, I've seen a humbling in you. I'm curious to know if you could kind of talk about the journey of your ego in all of this. Now you've never come across as an arrogant guy or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like an egomaniac, but I am talking about this persona that is who we project to the world. How
yeah.
has that been impacted by this journey?
Gosh, I hope that this experience, that this miracle, I hope that it doesn't get lost or forgotten or
Mm,
um, de-emphasized in my life, because when we're going through the trial, we rely on our Savior,
mm,
and there's times where we feel like we don't need to be saved, where we don't rely on Him, and I think that I am at a place where I'm I hope that in terms of priorities, just that my faith, I hope, is more real and transparent and um, than ever. And I hope that my family can sense that it's not a future oriented Dubbink anymore, that it's a
mm.
present tense, that I'm there, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's good to have goals, it's good to have strategies, planning. It's
Sure,
fantastic. But
sure.
don't live in that moment and miss the current moment.
Mm.
Um, I think that, yeah, I don't know. Is there more on that you want me to unpack on the ego part and that? Because that's still, you know,
No, not necessarily, and I mean, unless there is more to unpack.
Mhm.
Those are some of the things. That's a big theme for me.
Yeah,
Um, And again, I've never been this. I don't think I have, this really arrogant person or anything like that. But at the same time, I had this surety about myself and what I
Sure.
perceived the world to be like, and how I presented myself in the world, and the strategies that I use to protect myself from the world and find success and find my way and accomplish my will in the world.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that has really been kind of put on the table to be uh, deeply examined and somewhat cut apart,
Yeah.
and hopefully re-sewn back together as something
Yeah.
that's a better version of me, a more humble, a more deeper version of me, a version of me that's not so concerned about, like the iceberg, the part that's outside of the water that everybody
Yeah.
else sees, but
Yeah.
the part that's below the water. Yeah,
Yeah. That's a continual thing, I think, for us.
absolutely.
Is how do we try to hide like
Hmm.
the most of the iceberg, right? Like most of it, we hope's underground. We hope people don't see our dark secrets or our sinful nature or what we say to our kids on a bad day or all these things that go on or the
Yeah,
but I think that when we reach this point where we just want to we care about the right things, we also open ourselves up by our friends and people that we love to say, will you check me and make sure
mhm,
that those right things are in line for me? And I'm giving you permission to do that. And so one of my
yeah,
friends calls it the blind spots, right? And where you're just at your most vulnerable point and you just ask them, what are my blind spots? What am I missing in life? What do I need? And be real. And in those
yeah,
harsh realities and conversations, um, can become really, really fruitful and growable moments and teachable moments for all of us. I think if we're able to let ourselves out there,
mm,
but it also means that our ego has to go for a little bit, and that's hard. It's really hard.
yeah,
But in the end, hopefully, that's a really fruitful conversation. And when we go through these moments too, we just realize how much we're not in control. Like
yeah,
there's just
yeah,
I'm not in control of anything. Like I'm just trying to hang on for the ride. And some days are like that. We're just not in control. Um, yeah, but it's good to realize that it's not about you. It's not about Mike Dubbink. There's something much greater, and I am not in control,
yeah.
um, and that's okay. That's good.
And maybe this story, even the way the whole thing rolled out is a good example of what it should be like. Your Achilles became diseased and had to be completely removed,
Yeah,
and God grew a new one. And I think to some degree, our ego, we all have to get to the point where we have to let that go. What if you would have said to the doctor, "No, don't take it out. I want it. I know it's got, it's infected or it's diseased with MRSA," and it ended up killing you. And I wonder how many people go through the trials of life, the different challenges that oftentimes we hit in midlife, and rather than letting go of our ego, which isn't easy, and I I mean, and it doesn't happen like in an instant. Oh, I let go of my ego. I mean, it's this process that we go through. But if we don't let go of that and allow God to take it into His hands and do what He's going to do with it, and then put it back in us, grow a new, I don't want to say a new self. It's not a I'm not a different person in that sense, but I'm definitely beginning to grow into a different version of myself, through this process, through a lot of painful things that I've been through. Now, you mentioned too in a previous conversation a little bit about some of the things bouncing around in your head, the questions about why me. um,
mm,
and maybe at one point it was, why me? Why is this happening to me? Is this really about a stupid pair of boots that were too tight? How
yeah,
could this happen? I don't deserve this. And then, after the miracle, why me? Why did God choose to do this thing in my life? Wow. I mean, it's a huge wow moment, and experience. Are there any of those kinds of things that you want to just kind of speak to?
I think that's such a pivotal question. Why me?
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure that we can comprehend the answers to those things. I'm not sure it's good to dwell on those things. Our insights, our knowledge are not superior.
Yeah.
And I know that for me, a significant time in over ice, a little farming community growing up, where the person that I worked on the chicken farm in second grade, there, Beth and Glenn had a child named Matt, and Matt was in youth group with me, and he passed away from cancer.
Mm.
And that was
Wow.
one of those things we were praying for him. We were taking it to God and just saying, heal him. And he was such a good guy, like
Mm.
just beloved and just a great nature and just a such a fun kid and just doing the right things in life, right? Making good decisions. And then a couple years after that, another family from our church had an 18-year-old pass away from cancer.
Wow.
Years after that, it was a 16-year-old. Um,
Mm.
those were like, why, And I think that we have to remember that first of all, we don't know, right? We absolutely do not know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I could then have said that prayer doesn't work because we were praying our guts off for those kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we see prayer does work a
Mm.
lot of times in instances. So if we decide that prayer never works, there's no miracle through our faith in prayer. Or if we decide that miracles do happen and prayer does work, then God will do what God does. Um, and I think it's one thing that we have to remember that our the ultimate gift, the ultimate miracle that He provides us is eternal life and
Yeah.
eternity with Him. And that in the end, that is where what happened. And I can't imagine going through those things and having those conversations with um, the teen or like having uh, but so I do think, like, why did it happen to me, but also more so there's a little bit of guilt sometimes, like,
Mm.
honestly there's some guilt where
Yeah.
I'm at the gym and I see somebody who's struggling with cancer, and I'm today I ran 3 miles. I didn't run, excuse me, I walked 3 miles and then I biked 9 miles. I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be like recovering from a surgery, not walking for a year yet, right? If
Mm.
that,
Wow.
in best case scenario. So, and I'm in the gym and I'm doing all this and I'm seeing somebody who else is going through chemo and stuff like that. I'm just like,
Mm.
why me? And so my role has to become then someone who is praying on their behalf because I've experienced the power of prayer in a profound way. And so I don't know what I've done was I took that song and the lyrics of that song in Jesus' name by Katie Nicole, um, and I've just sent that to people that have gone through stuff,
Wow.
I'm like, and I'll listen to it and I'll just pray over them when I'm listening to it, and it's made me realize that my connectedness to God is not a Sunday thing. It's not a morning devo thing, but it's an all day thing,
Yeah.
and so it's helped me to remember that when I'm in moments like at the gym and I'm in the zone,
Yeah.
um, and I see someone that I'm praying there that moment. And so hopefully that continues, let's hope
Yeah.
but that's been powerful for me to realize, like, my part in this process is to be a prayer warrior for them, to be an encourager and somebody who is praying for their miracle to
Yeah.
happen.
Wow. That's a sobering, centering thought. Um, yeah. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Um, I wonder even if that doesn't apply to this whole why me or why this or why does that happen. And I mean, my head gets wrapped up, knotted up in that whole thought process at different things, either direction. Why me this bad thing or why me this good thing? And maybe Jesus is just saying, why don't you just live in joy? Um, enjoy life, knowing that this is temporal. It's all going to go away, and I have something so much more for you. Um, he is preparing a place for us, and He calls us His own, and He's going to come and take us to be with Him forever.
Mhm.
Those who put their faith in Christ, those who are in Christ, will live as children of God in His kingdom, in His glory forever and ever.
Amen.
So maybe, rather than trying to figure all that out, we just need to
Yeah.
say, it is what it is. In this
Yep.
life, it is what it is.
Yep.
Um, and be thankful and joyful in the
Yeah.
midst of it.
Right on.
Well, is there anything that you wish I would have asked? Anything we didn't cover? Anything you'd hoped that you'd be able to have an opportunity to say that I didn't necessarily open the door for? Anything you want to say as we bring this to a close?
Um, I don't know. I always think about kids. It's just my nature, I guess.
Yeah.
I love kids. I love working with kids, and
Yeah.
I'm always mindful that they're going through this journey too. Um,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
own kids were on this journey, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was hard for them. That was really
Yeah.
hard for them, and they're still, you know, still kind of processing everything and the joy and excitement and all of those things that went with it. So,
Sure.
it's as we go through midlife, as we're handling our own things, we've got kids too, or grandchildren or whatever that are processing their faith, their life, their learning, the lessons, and this was a lesson not just for me, hopefully, but a
Absolutely.
family lesson and a lesson for kids on what does it look like to go through these valleys and then these mountaintops. What is it like to live out your faith? And you know, I hope that it's something that's had an impact on them. I know it has,
Yeah.
and they're with it and through it and deep in it too. Even as we as adults try and figure it out, they're figuring it out as kids too. So yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Talk about sobering and centering thoughts again. Yeah, that's huge. And and just this idea that we have a tremendous opportunity not just to teach them things about God or try to get them to be interested in the things of God or all of that, but we literally have the opportunity to show them the way of Jesus. How does Jesus respond? How does he live? How does he what was his way in the world? And right now at Hope, we're going through the Beatitudes. I think that speaks, the Sermon on the Mount speaks deeply to the way of Jesus and how he lived. And we've been given the opportunity to live like Jesus. And it's these kinds of things that kind of drag us through that mess. And we get tested and we have the opportunities every day. So
yep,
cool.
good.
Well, Mike, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing your heart. Like I said earlier, for being vulnerable and real.
Mhm.
I think people need to hear these kind of stories. They need to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you've been able to kind of shed some light on that through your story today. And I really, really deeply appreciate that. Um, a lot of times I ask, or I hear other podcasters ask their guests, "Where can people find you these days?" Do you want people to reach out to you? Do you mind if they do?
Sure,
Um,
sure.
and where would people find you?
Um, I guess you can email me
Okay.
at yeah, dubbink@gmail.com.
Okay.
Really excited.
Dubbink.
Yeah, DUBBINKMI at gmail.com.
Okay.
And yeah, I'd love to chat with anybody. Just pray for them. Just to um, if the story connects, if it's helpful,
Yeah.
um, if you got questions, if you're in a place where you just need somebody to chat with or just have coffee with, just like you, Mylan, you do that with anybody. It's just rewarding to do that, to for
Absolutely.
somebody to say that. So definitely, yep,
I love your heart to love and serve others and put yourself out there. Are you on Facebook?
yes, I'm
Okay.
on Facebook.
Hey,
Yep.
one of the things that I'm thinking about doing, and by the time this airs, maybe it's already happened. I'm thinking about putting a Facebook group together for this podcast, and inviting my guests to be kind of present in that group if they want to be all the time, but especially the week after their particular episode
Yeah.
airs, so that they can kind of interact with people and make themselves available for questions and stuff. So I hope you'll be able to do that. Thanks again for being a part of this, for doing
Thank
this,
you.
and for sharing your heart. Hey, everybody, wasn't that a great conversation with Mike Dubbink? And what a powerful story. Praise God for the work that God has done in Mike's life and the ways that we see God working all around us. Me and my boys went out and saw the Northern Lights just the other night. And man, What an amazing display. And to think of all the different ways that God demonstrates his power and his majesty through creation and through these different kinds of stories. I hope this story was an inspiration to you and is an encouragement to you as maybe you're going through some tough things in life as well. I want to take just a moment and let you know that if you'd like to continue to support this podcast, one of the things you can do is subscribe. Subscribing allows you to make sure that you get the podcast every time it comes out so you don't miss an episode. But it also helps the algorithm a little bit. The more subscribers I have, the more Apple and Spotify and YouTube know that this is good content that people are interested in. You can also like and comment and of course share with your friends. I'd so deeply appreciate it. It'd mean the world to me if you'd share this with your friends and help us grow this audience. I want to take just a moment to and thank those who've supported this podcast financially with their prayers and in any way that you've jumped in. I just want you to know how deeply I appreciate you helping me get this thing going. And last, I want to invite you all to come by our Facebook page. Our Facebook group, Halftime, is a place where you can find more information about our guests. You can find bonus material and conversations and resources and things like that. There's going to be a link to that Facebook group in the show notes for this episode. So I hope that you'll join us there and that you'll help us continue to build this community of like-minded people going through midlife together. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless.